Hey everyone, this is Michelle Rene with Windermere Coeur d'Alene Realty, and I have Justin Hoffman here. He's with Blackbird Digital. I'm going to let him talk in a minute, so just give me one sec, Justin. I just want to give people a quick overview of what we're doing here, and then we're going to jump right into it. I'm creating some content, but this is real life circumstances. I'm a realtor with Windermere Coeur d'Alene Realty, and I just feel like there's so many questions out there and different scenarios. Everyone's situation is different. So right now at the moment, I'm sort of focusing on home buyers and helping to answer some questions that come up pretty often. And sometimes people don't even know what questions they should be asking. And so I work with Justin on a regular basis, and some of these conversations came up, and he has been so nice and generous to let me have this conversation with him and record it, and to help all of you in, maybe you're in a similar situation. So let's jump into it. So Justin, can you just give us a little bit of background on who you are? And I mean, feel free to, talk about like how we know each other or whatever you want to share.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Justin. I'm 30 years old. I'm born and raised here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I've moved around a bit, but always ended up back here. I am the owner of Blackbird Digital. We're a full service ad agency here as well, which has been a bit of a challenge. I'm 5 years in, started it in my mid 20s after working for almost 10 years as marketing director for another agency. But yeah, I find I'm at this point in my life where I think it's time to at least start thinking about buying a house. I've been renting my whole life, and I know that especially with how the market's going around here, like I need to buy sooner rather than later because it's only going to get harder. Um, but I faced I think the pretty typical issues that young people do and that like entrepreneurs do as well when you're kind of reliant on a relatively weird income that ebbs and flows. And that I mean, frankly, invested pretty much every dollar I've had over the last decade into this business. So it's just kind of on the surface seemed pretty prohibitive, but I know there's options, and that's why I'm here talking with you, Michelle.
Yeah. So I can't wait to dig into our conversation. And so with the buyer, we kind of call them buyer interviews. And there's some things that I would be addressing in a traditional buyer interview about agency and how realtors work and how we get paid and all those things. So we're not going to address that. I wanted to kind of talk more specifically about your situation and without prying too much into your personal life, but there's so many people in this boat where you're self-employed and you have this income that, like you said, it ebbs and flows. And so um, there, uh, it's a little bit of a, different animal, if you will. And it actually, our original conversation inspired me to reach out. I'm doing these interviews with lenders to
Mhm.
give some insight on different topics. And this is a perfect topic because there's so many questions when it comes to someone who's self-employed. So that one's not up yet, but I had an awesome conversation with Leslia from it's called At Home, and
Mhm.
she has an amazing podcast room. Anyway, we went into some really relevant topics. So whoever's watching this, or even you, Justin, when I do get that up, obviously I'll share it onto my YouTube. But there's some really great information and resources in there. And obviously, I have so many lender friends. There's so many competent people here locally that have like years and years of experience in the biz. So it's not like you just need to go to one. I think it's helpful to hear, with these interviews, you'll actually be able to get a sense. I've done one with a credit union, one with a bank, and then Leslie is a mortgage broker. So sometimes brokers, can get a little more creative. So anyway, all of that aside, let me just ask you some questions, kind of specifically about what your situation is. And so I think maybe you touched on it, but like what's helped what's sort of held you back from buying anything up till now? I know you said you're
Yeah.
30, right?
Mhm. Y- Yeah, I'd say the two biggest things. One is frankly commitment. Not as much now as it was, 5 years ago. I didn't know if I wanted to live here forever. And, now that I own a business and stuff, I'm pretty established here. I don't really plan on going anywhere. So that's not as big of an issue. But I think that and then frankly just like loan worthiness like in general I don't look great on paper which is frustrating because the reason I don't look great on paper is building my future with this business and everything. Like the problem I always run into, it's easy for me to buy a car. I can go to a dealership and buy a car because the way they do their credit checks, they just want my total income, and since I'm a sole proprietor LLC, my total income is $500,000 a year. Like that, they're throwing loans at me at 1.5%, no problem. But when you get into stuff like um, even some business loans, but especially mortgage loans and stuff where they want to see like my personal income, it's not much. I only pay myself like 30 or $35,000 a year. Granted, there's obviously benefits to owning a business. Like a lot bills like my cell phone and stuff, I don't necessarily pay from my personal account because it's mostly used for work. But because of how young this business is and me just trying to build this for my future and retirement at some point, I don't take as much
Oh,
money as I probably should, and that always is a red flag right there too, because they want me to have, especially as a single person, they want me to have $100,000 household income, and I don't have that, at least not on paper.
on paper. And so this
Mhm.
brings up a really good point that in some of these interviews, it's one of the first things that comes up. So with self-employed, um, again, depending on who you're working with,
Mhm.
some of the banks or, more traditional lenders like a credit union, they want it pretty cookie cutter to,
Mhm.
I think maybe to your point, they want X amount. And
Mhm.
by the way, we don't have to share any,
Oh, I don't.
real
I'm an open book. I
numbers.
don't care.
Yeah, but there are some maybe that might be a little more flexible,
Mhm.
or there's certain lines on your tax returns that they can add back in.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's where like the legwork is important, and maybe talking to more than
Mhm.
just one lender, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you need to go get your credit pulled each time you talk to a
Mhm.
lender. It doesn't cost you anything to sit down and talk to someone and
Mhm.
kind of game plan out like, okay, look, here's my situation.
Mhm.
What do you got for me? Like, is this a hard no
Mhm.
or, and most people kind of know what their credit is. So,
Mhm.
you might, for the lender, I mean, they're not going to be able to give you real numbers until they
Mhm.
actually pull your credit, right? But if you know, like, you're a 640 versus a 750,
Mhm.
I mean, those are very different scenarios for
Mhm.
the lender. Um, and but if you're at least close, then they can give you an idea of what to expect,
Mhm.
or what programs you might qualify for based on your income, your tax returns, and all that. And a lot of times they want 2 years of tax returns. That's you're further along in the process than a lot of people. Maybe
Mhm.
they just started their business, or when you do a tax return, that means you've worked that whole year and you're into the following year.
Mhm.
Sometimes if someone just started their business, they don't even have last
Yeah,
year's
there's no
tax
history.
return, right?
Mhm.
So at least you have some history,
Mhm.
and it's more than 1 or even 2 years. So I think, a lot of times when you first start out, and I'm getting into the weeds, I'm really conscious. I'm the realtor. I
Mhm.
work with a lot of lenders. We work together on some of these things, but I'm very conscious of like, I don't know their programs. Each one
Mhm.
is different. And so I'm not going to speak for like what they can or can't do, but I do believe having, whatever you have, 4 or 5 years of
Mhm.
returns is probably going to be more helpful for you than just having one or two, because
Mhm.
generally that first year or two, to your point, like you're investing so much into your business and it might not look like a lot on paper, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's all that. So what is kind of prompting you to start thinking, at least at least contemplating this at this point in your life?
Oh man, my 30th birthday. My midlife crisis.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I think it's time to start being serious about that kind of stuff. Like I very much subscribed to in my 20s, I could kind of do whatever I wanted. I had the freedom to, just explore lifestyles, I guess, like and how I wanted to live the rest of my life. And I know
Yeah.
that, you know, I'm pretty well planted now, especially having a business. Like I don't do a ton outside of running my business. I know I'm going to be here locally. I need to stay somewhere convenient, and but still have, place for all my things, which I think is another thing that kind of at least what's driving me away from renting now is, I rent a suburban house in Post Falls that's I think it's 1,100 square feet. It's okay size for a small like starter rental, but I'm big into cars and art and stuff like that. So like I need space and I don't have much space.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Okay. And so what would buying a home right now or any time in the near future, how would that change your life or what would that mean to you at this point in your life?
For me, like I'd say the two big things. A big one for me right now is autonomy, like just being able to do what I want, like and not having a landlord to deal with.
Yeah.
Not that I mean I love my landlord. I don't want to sound like I have an issue with them, but I mean it's not my house, so I can't do things that I want to do sometimes. And then I mean investment. I think investment's important. I already do a lot. I have multiple investment accounts and stuff. Like I'm very well planning for my future, but real estate's one of the best. And again, like I said earlier, like from an investment perspective, especially the longer I wait, the less return you get out of it, right?
Exactly. And so you're renting this whole time,
Mhm.
right?
And paying as much or more than a mortgage, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm,
you're probably not wrong because so again, anyone watching, we're in
mhm,
the North Idaho area. I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Justin's in Post Falls. I mean, it's kind of a booming area. I'm sitting right here on Sherman Avenue. We've got three high rises being constructed right now. I mean, it's just like the growth is, it really is exploding here and it has been, right, ever since
mhm,
COVID. So, and even before that, like we were popular, we had kind
mhm,
of been found and are on the radar, this area of Coeur d'Alene and North Idaho in
mhm.
general, but it feels like even more so now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think we're going through what Jackson Hole did like 15 years ago. Like that's pretty well where we're at. It's
yeah.
tourist destinations blowing up.
And I mean, they are trying to, for sure every week, but almost every day, it seems like there's some kind of article or, post about the growth here. And they're trying to, I would say, limit it or at least make it so it's not out of control.
Mhm.
But it's a challenge. It's a challenge. So we're not going to speak to all that. So we'll get back to your situation.
Mhm,
So renting, you're not wrong. Like that,
mhm,
there's benefits to renting, right? Like
mhm,
you can, to your point, you weren't sure you wanted to for sure be here for the long haul. So that's one thing. And also being able to, maybe you want to move up or downsize or whatever. It's a little easier to kind of move around rather than having to buy or, sell each time if you wanted to either move up or move down. But all that money that you're spending in rent could be going toward your own investment and your own future rather than, the landlord. But anyway, so there's pros and cons. It's not like renting is terrible for everyone. Sometimes it makes sense for people. Okay. So is the home you're looking at purchasing, you're primarily looking for your own primary residence? Are you
mhm.
also sort of eyeballing, you mentioned investment. Are you eyeballing that for like a future investment, or is this
I
just
think,
your own use?
I mean, right now, if I'm being realistic, it's probably my own use. I would not be against buying something again more suburban, kind of like I live in right now, but probably a little bigger. Um, but with the intention of renting that at some point. But I also like I think there's a lot of options at this point. Like I understand what I want in life, I think right now, and I know that if I were to even build a house right now, like I would be able to do what I want. Like I'm the kind of person that I only need 1,000 square feet of living space, but I want a 4-car garage or a shop or something, like that's where I
Yeah,
spend my time. So like I don't see myself like wanting to upgrade in 5 years necessarily, like I think a lot of people do. So I
yeah,
think
okay.
I'm at a point where I could commit to something pretty long term right now.
And one of the things that this reminds me of, talking about your primary residence versus an investment property,
Mhm.
sometimes you can kind of combine those.
Mhm.
So if you looked at maybe buying a duplex
Mhm.
or up to a fourplex, you can get a traditional loan, like a
Mhm.
regular mortgage. Once you get above a fourplex, meaning like 5 units or more,
Mhm.
actually last year I sold a 5 unit multifamily property. They call it
Mhm.
small multifamily.
Mhm.
But because that was 5 units, it doesn't qualify for a traditional mortgage. You have to
Mhm.
get a commercial loan, which those rates are going to be higher. And all the requirements are different. Commercial is like a different animal. So if
Mhm.
you can stay under the 4 units or less, and let's say we found a duplex or a regular primary single family home with an
Mhm.
ADU in the back, an
Mhm.
additional dwelling unit. So depending on how big or nice that ADU is, maybe you could live in the front, rent out the
Mhm.
back. You could live in the back, rent out the front.
Mhm.
So now it's sort of dual purpose, right? So you have a place to live. It's your primary residence. You got the loan
Mhm.
that is the best possible rate that you're going to get because it's primary. But depending on the lender, they may be able to, like, let's say it's a duplex.
Mhm.
It's very clear probably like what that duplex rented out for. So they might even be able to use that income
Mhm.
um, to help you qualify, right? So
Okay.
now all
Mhm.
of a sudden, it's not just here's what I make on paper every year,
Mhm.
right? It's like, okay, here's a little bump, here
Yeah.
X amount. They're not probably going to be able to use 100% of, I don't know, let's say that unit makes, 30 grand a year. They're
Mhm.
not going to use 100% of that income, but even if it was, they were able to use 20 grand
Mhm.
of that income as toward, your credit worthiness or your buying power or whatever. I mean, that's a big bump, right?
Yeah.
So I think it might be a little bit of a harder sell if it was the single family home with the
Mhm.
ADU in the back, unless you
Mhm.
had some rental history on that ADU.
Mhm.
A lot of people, they don't necessarily rent out the ADU, you know what I mean? So it
Mhm.
depends like property by property. But a duplex, they're going to have history on that. It's going to be super clear, like how much it had been rented for in the past.
Mhm.
And then just going down that road a little further, um, one of the challenges when someone is selling a duplex or a fourplex is the rents are low. So they don't,
Mhm.
maybe the people were there for 10 or 15 years and they're not raising the rents because
Mhm.
the owner doesn't feel it's right to do that. And so now the rents are like the not
Below
market.
market. Yeah.
So the lender would look at what the actual rents are, not what you think it should rent for,
Mhm.
right? So that would be, and again, this is kind of like an aside, but
Mhm.
it's just something to think about for your future
Yeah.
because let's say we found a fourplex and I don't know, mom and dad are able to help and purchase or whatever, however, you're able to get in. Now, all of a sudden, you're living for free
Mhm.
because, these others are paying likely, whatever the mortgage would be. So it's
Mhm.
just things to think about. I will say though, we're in an area where those small multifamily properties are kind of few and far between.
Mhm.
So the sweet spot might be if you were able to qualify and find, the single family home situation with the ADU.
Mhm.
The lender might not be, like I said, be willing to use that extra income for your loan. But if you were able to qualify on your own and had the ADU, I don't know if this is something that you're interested in, but it's
Yeah.
an
I mean,
option,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I've been actually pretty curious about that. A couple of my best friends from college ended up buying a duplex and doing the same thing in the Tri-Cities, and it's worked out really good for them. Like their renters don't pay a ton of money, and they're still paying like 2/3 of the mortgage payment. Like it's pretty
which
sweet.
is huge.
Mm-hmm.
2/3. I mean, you're paying way more than that in your rent.
Oh,
You
for
know what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, so even if it was half,
Mm-hmm.
like say we found a triplex or
Mm-hmm.
something. So it's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, by the way, so when you do this, and let's say, I know you said you're planning on living there for a while. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, Justin, you might find a person and want to get married, and now all of a sudden you
Mm-hmm.
want kids and all the
Mm-hmm.
things, and your life has changed, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe your person doesn't want to live in a duplex, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, you're not stuck there forever. So you can get into it as long as it's your primary residence. You live there for X amount of time, a year, 2 years, or whatever. I think usually it's a year. If you end up ever selling, the 2 years comes into play with the capital gains.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, I don't know, you wanted to sell that in order to buy the real house that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you had only lived there for 1 year, not two, whatever money you make on that property would be taxed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's the capital gains. However, if it was your primary residence for 2 years or more within the last 5 years, and you sold it within that 5 years and you had lived in it for the two, then whatever money you make is all tax-free.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, little disclaimer, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax accountant. It's just that's my understanding of how
Yeah.
the things work, but I mean, that's real money, like
Mhm.
in your pocket as opposed to, you know,
Yeah. Capital gains tax a lot too, so that's a pretty big chunk of money.
yeah, it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say the exemption. So let's say you made, I don't know, 300 grand on, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's not likely. But let's just say you made 300 grand. The tax exempt is, I think, up to 250 for a
Mm-hmm.
single and 500. So they double it for if you're married.
Oh,
So
okay.
anyway, so that's that. Okay. You talked a little bit about your business
Mm-hmm.
and that you've been self-employed for 5 years. So we covered that. Um, Tell me again, with you don't have to disclose numbers, but your income, does it fluctuate quite a bit or is it
Yeah.
steady to
Yeah.
some degree?
Right now, I'm working on like restructuring my business as an S corp, which would require me on like proper payroll. But right now, just because of how much money ebbs and flows with the business, and honestly, the nature of our industry, because we're doing a lot of like big projects that, we get a couple huge lump sum payments every couple months, and then we have like little subscription kind of services to kind of fill the gaps. But because of those big lump sum payments, like I sometimes I'm not, paying myself on the actual payday. I'm putting it off for a week to make sure that all the bills and payroll and everything gets done before I take my money. And sometimes I'll take less or more. It just kind of depends on how things are going. Um,
Well, and the lender's going to look at
mhm,
what's happening for the year, not
mhm.
for the month or the week,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Mhm.
know. Um, but your personal finances are separated from your business, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And have you had a chance to sit down with a lender at all? Or like, have you ever talked to someone seriously about buying?
And not with me as the subject necessarily. I mean, I've been exposed to it a lot because of the industry I'm in, the work I do, and the networking and stuff. So I've spent a lot of time with agents and lenders and stuff, just as like clients and prospects and networking events. But no, I've never like sat down and talked about home buying specifically, that end of financing.
Okay. So I love this conversation because my hope is that whenever we're, done chatting about this, I mean, I'm here as a resource. So I think it's one of the myths or things that people think like, oh, I'm not ready, so I'm not going to talk to anyone yet.
Mhm.
I think the opposite. I don't care, Justin, I mean, obviously I want you as a client forever. So whenever you are ready, I, want to help you, but it doesn't mean it has to be right now. Like if you do all your, legwork and research and talk to the lenders, now you know what the game plan is, and we have a game plan. So whether it's in a month or a year or 3 years, whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope it's not that long, just because, some of the stuff we've already talked about. But I just think it's important to have the game plan together, and then you can pull the trigger when it makes sense in your life. And
Mhm.
sometimes it changes your behavior too, like to know what the game plan is. So if you sit down with a lender and they give you all the numbers and, yes, there's low down payment options. I mean, some are as small as like a half of 1% if you qualify for that particular program.
Mhm.
There's some that is based on location. So like USDA is a loan program.
Mhm.
It's more for rural areas.
Yeah. Which I think is honestly where I'd prefer to live. I grew up super rural.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't love living so far out of town where I have to plan a trip to the grocery store, but I mean, I like the privacy and quietness of being outside
yeah.
of town.
And a lot of people do. So like USDA might be a good option for you. And that's one of the very low down payment.
Mhm.
I want to say it's one half of 1%. So you would have to qualify for all the things, right? Like as long as you make whatever you need to buy that property. And there are limits. You can't make over a certain amount. So again, sitting down with the lender, but
Mhm.
here again, if you know what that circumstance is, and then we know what to go look for and where. A lot of the loan programs don't do that, where it's based on the location of the property. That one does.
Mhm.
But like if you're, let's say you're FHA or you're a conventional loan, it's not going to matter if it's in Post Falls or Coeur d'Alene
Mhm.
or whatever. Um, but my point is, like if you, let's say it's going to be better for you, maybe, you're going to save the 10 grand or the 6 grand or the 20 grand, whatever your number is. Now, maybe you're not, doing some of the, I don't know, vacations that you thought you were going to, or, I'm just saying, like, if you know that's the end game, um, and in 6 months, it's not like that has to be forever, right?
Mhm.
I'm just saying it's so important, I think, to have the game plan and know what's happening, because it helps you to plan other parts of your life too,
Mhm.
you know?
Makes
So,
sense.
okay. Um, so if it turns out that it's feasible, is that something you think like if it's a low down payment and
Mhm.
you're you're sort of exchanging whatever you're paying for rent, and
Mhm.
maybe it's similar to pay something toward a mortgage. Is that something that you're game
Yeah,
to do?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I could save up money relatively quickly. And as a matter of fact, like I've kind of thought about it now. Like my lease on my current house is up in October. October 1st is when it like officially starts again. I've been
Mhm.
there for 3 years now. Um, I've thought about building and going like a shop home route, which honestly probably fits my kind of needs the best.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, I think if I have a good plan by like fall of this year, then
yeah.
that would give me enough runway to be able to be moved into a place when my lease ends in 2026.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So that means, you're going to sit down with the lender hopefully sometime soon right now. And right now, meaning we're in spring,
Mhm.
to get your game plan. Again,
Mhm.
you don't need to do the credit pull, but
Mhm.
then you know at least what you're targeting for which loan program and how much to save and all that. And then when we get maybe 2 months prior to
Mhm.
your target date, and remember that it takes some time to look around.
Mhm.
Summer, so that puts us in summer, which that's the
Mhm.
height of the market, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Like if what, that's the point, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, what your situation is. And
Mhm.
maybe it makes sense, or your lender, I mean, your landlord might let you out a month or two early.
I'm
So
sure they
now
will.
we're
They're
looking
really
at the end
nice.
of spring instead of the height of summer.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway, just ideas and thoughts. The other thing is, if you were looking at building,
Mhm.
this is a whole different kind of can of worms that,
Mhm.
so I'll give you some highlights. In general, as far as the affordability factor and getting into a home, whether it's a resale home or a new construction, you can
Mhm.
always ask in your offer to have the seller pay either closing cost or pay X amount and we would get the number from the lender
Mhm.
to buy down the rate. So right now, that's what's holding a lot of people back is
Mhm.
the higher interest rates. So prices of homes are high, they haven't gone down. Some people were sitting on the sidelines thinking, I'm just going to wait for the market to crash because I know it's going to
Mhm.
crash. Well, we're still growing, we're still
Around
developing,
here.
the demand is
Mhm.
here. I'm sorry, that ship has sailed,
Mhm.
it's not happening.
Mhm.
I mean, short of, I don't know, another COVID, but even then, like
Mhm.
that helped our market and it made it actually go bananas,
Yeah.
not the other way. So
Mhm.
the waiting, I think, is a mistake because of all the things we've already talked about.
Mhm.
But the seller can help pay, you can ask them. That doesn't mean they're
Mhm.
going to, but because of the climate right now and how the market is, at least we know the new construction builders, oftentimes it's pretty common for them to
Mhm.
put X amount toward either closing costs or paying your rate down. Paying
Mhm.
your rate down, closing costs is great. That's, it's whatever the number is, 5 grand, 10 grand, whatever, depending on how expensive the home is that you're purchasing.
Mhm.
It's all based on that. And then but the rate, if you're able to buy your rate down, that helps you for the life of the loan, which is huge, right?
Mhm.
That's 30 years. That's a big amount.
Yeah.
So if you could get them to do both of those, that's awesome. There are limits on how much you can buy a rate down or how much the seller can contribute. Again, I'm not going to go into those details. I don't know what they are. The lender will, but just knowing, like, let's say a round number. I mean, it's pretty common right now for lenders to be offering somewhere between 5 to 10 grand. I've
Mhm.
heard even as much as 20, but that's on a very expensive home, so I wouldn't expect that. But I would say at minimum, you could probably at least get 5 grand covered, maybe 10.
Yeah. I mean, that's big. So
It's big.
when you say buy the rate down, does that mean like basically just help boost your down payment so you get a lower interest rate? Or is there
Yeah, so there you're putting X amount, let's say 5,000 bucks,
Mhm.
and the lender will tell you how much
Mhm.
you need to buy the rate down. So yeah, instead
Yeah.
of maybe, I don't know what they are right now this minute, but let's say it's 6.5 right now.
Mhm.
You might be able to buy it down to 6.
Mhm.
Or maybe even 5.9. Like if you're getting
Mhm.
into the fives, if our interest rate was in the fives right now, we would be going bananas.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like people would be buying again.
Yep.
But that's why I'm like shouting from the rooftops, like you can get a
Mhm.
5% rate right now. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
not 5%, but 5.5 or 5.8 or something with
Well, I'm the
some
kind of
of the,
person that's a lot more worried about the price than the rate because I know you can always refinance down the road. I'd rather save $100,000 on a house than save 0.25 or 25% on a loan,
yeah,
you know?
but when you look at that 0.25
Mhm.
over the year, because maybe, if you're getting into the mid fives,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's going to go lower than that. Are we going to get back into the fours to where you would be able, where it would make sense for you to refinance? I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know that we're ever going to be back in the fours, right?
Yeah.
We might, but what if we're not?
Mhm.
And and so that five, mid fives or high fives, if you're able to get into that and
Mhm.
get into the home because of one of these low down payment programs, like here you are,
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
that makes sense.
Um, okay, so we've talked a lot about the lending part of it and, your motivation. What would the home itself look like? I know you said you like the idea of rural. I
Mhm.
know your family, which I love this, by the way. I mean, yes, you're my marketing guy,
Mhm.
but I mean, we know each other from NIBCA. We're in the same
Yeah.
industry to a degree,
Yeah.
we know a lot of the same people.
Mhm.
I know your mom. She's amazing. I met your dad last night. At an NIBCA event. I just
Mhm.
love, like, it's all in the family. And
Mhm.
I just feel good about, I'm hoping I can help you guys at some
Yeah.
point.
You will be the one for sure.
And so tell me about the house itself that you
Mhm.
would love. You mentioned a shop home, but you're okay with a traditional, just like single
Yeah, I
family
mean,
home in a neighborhood?
yeah, at the end of the day, all I'm really worried about is having space for cars and stuff. I mean, like it's very irresponsible, but I currently own 5 cars and I often own motorcycles and stuff too. And I just need space to work on. Like, that's my hobby. That's what I do is work on cars when I'm not at work. So
Okay.
that's important to me. And then I'm also kind of techie, so like having good opportunities for things like lots of electrical and stuff like that is really important as well. But I
Okay.
mean, the car thing is the biggest thing for me. Like, I don't need a ton of living space. I think a two, maybe three-bedroom house is plenty for me.
Okay.
Um, I don't entertain a lot. When I do, it's a small group, and I just want space to do my stuff and spread out and have tools and stuff. Like right now, I'm
Yeah.
in a two-car garage that I currently share with a roommate, so we have it split in half. And like, I park one of my cars in there, and my half the garage is taken up. I got nothing,
Okay.
and that's.
What about fixer-uppers? Are you handy? Do you want turnkey?
I mean, I would probably prefer turnkey, but I mean, I'm perfectly capable of doing a fixer-upper. I don't know if I'd necessarily want to, if that makes sense, just because I don't have a lot of time outside of work. Um, but I mean, I'm not against a fixer-upper by any means.
Okay. And you're okay with like Post Falls, Rathdrum, or like what areas would you target or would be
Yeah.
most ideal for you?
I mean, I do like Post Falls a lot, especially the outskirts of Post Falls. Probably avoid Hayden just because Hayden City's tough to live in sometimes. But I mean, I grew up south of town. My parents still live there. I've even talked with them because they own property out there. I've talked with them about buying 5 acres off of their parcel from them and building a house out there. And I'm open to a lot of things. The shop house thing, honestly, I think has kind of popped into my mind because it's been really trendy lately. And
Mhm.
I know that you can get a lot more house for a lot less money that way. But you run into a lot of permitting issues and stuff. Like with originally I was thinking about just doing like an ADU on the back chunk of my parents' property that would be, a quarter mile away from their house. But the problem that we're running into there is they have a 1,800 square foot house, and to qualify for an ADU, it's got to be half or double. So like then I'm stuck with either a tiny home or an absolute monster of a house that I don't need. So uh,
Yeah.
there's just weird little tricky permit things. And I know there's probably ways around if you know what you're doing. Um, but yeah, that's where my head's been in the last couple years and kind of what's brought me to where I'm at. But I mean, at the end of the day, like if even just buying a decent sized house in town that has a 3-car garage is plenty for me.
Yeah. Okay. And we might get lucky and find one with an RV garage because that sort of
Yeah.
serves like as a shop, but
Yeah,
it's
there's a
attached to
bunch of
your
those in my
home.
neighborhood that honestly that would be perfect. Even though I don't
Yeah.
have an RV, I don't really want an RV, but
Yeah.
that's enough vertical space to put a car lift or something in if I ever want to. Like I can grow into that pretty well.
Yeah. And usually with an RV garage home, you have the two car plus the
Mhm.
RV garage. So it's
Mhm.
like that
That'd be
that might
awesome.
be an ideal setup. Okay. Noted. Okay. Time frame, we kind of talked about that. Are you tied to a lease? We discussed that. Um, this is a good question. I like this one. What part of the process in home buying makes you feel the most overwhelmed or you are uneasy about?
I mean, realistically, the money part, but I mean, still the commitment. I don't know, man. I'm just a kind of an anxious person sometimes, and just thinking about like making a decision that big and sticking with it is overwhelming to me a lot.
Mhm.
Like that's probably the biggest thing I've had to get over in running a business is getting around that kind of personality trait, I guess. And when I do
Well,
it,
good on you, Justin, though, because look, you've done it
Mhm.
and you've been doing it for 5 years. So that means you started when you're 25. A lot of people think about this forever and ever and ever, and they're 45 and then they start, or 35 or whatever, like you did it in your 20s. So look at all the stuff that you've accomplished. You've got staff. I mean, good on you,
Thank you. It's been a lot of work.
honestly.
I haven't had much of a life outside of this, but I love it
But
that way.
it's, it's not going to be like that forever.
No, but I mean, honestly, I like what I do. Like, I don't have, I do what I do because I love it. I went into marketing and advertising and design and stuff because that was what I enjoyed doing in my free time. And I don't know what I would do if I wasn't working, honestly. I know I sound like such a boomer when I say that, but I'm like, I don't really want to retire because retirement
Okay,
to me
boomer.
is just, retirement to me is just working on personal projects instead of like paid client projects, like
Yeah,
I'm still doing the same thing, just with
yeah.
like the direction, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. So will there be other people involved in the process? I like to ask this question because sometimes there's other people involved, like actually on the loan,
Hmm.
Obviously we need to know about that when
Hmm.
we're making offers, is it just you or other people? But sometimes other people are involved. They're not on the loan or buying the property, but they are just as important in making the decision,
Hmm.
helping you make the decision.
Yeah, I mean, right now, not particularly. I mean, I just gotta have a 4-year relationship, so I mean, there's little things like that, and I expect that at some point I will have another person like literally involved with the buying of the house. But right now, no. I think that my parents could probably be convinced to co-sign if I needed them to. Most of that, which is probably a pretty new um, thing because their business has grown a lot in the last 5 years or so as well. Um, so they're able to do that a little more, but I would prefer not to if I don't have to.
Sure.
So I don't have to take advantage of them, honestly, is the biggest
Just
reason.
so you know, that is getting more common
Mhm.
because of our, market and the higher interest rates. So, I mean, don't feel weird about like, oh, I had to have my parents co-sign. I mean, it is definitely getting more, people are
Mhm.
having to get creative.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the parents are willing to help anyway. You might, the gift, I forget the number, but there's a number where it starts to become an issue with your taxes, but it's a very, very, very high number. I can't imagine you would ever, hit that.
Oh,
So, so, if they did gift you something
Mhm.
like help with the down payment,
Mhm.
um, it's pretty common.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to be close with my family and still have that opportunity. And like I said, I'd prefer not to, just so I don't have to like take advantage of them and lean on them and put them in that situation. But I know if push came to shove, they would be willing to.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. So what would make this experience feel successful for you?
Oh man, I think a clear plan, goals would probably be the biggest thing right now with where I'm at.
Mhm.
Because I do the thing where I pack a bunch of money away into my savings and then I end up having to spend it on something and like being able to
Like a sixth car, maybe?
sometimes no, honestly I'm pretty good at not spending it on dumb stuff, but there's times where I've had a good business opportunity or something and the business doesn't have the cash right now, so I give my owner contribution and do it that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep, it's very typical with
yeah.
self-employed. I
Mhm.
I get it. Okay, so in my humble opinion, the next step for you would just to be to sit down with
Mhm.
a lender or maybe a couple of options, two or three options. Obviously, I have people I could refer to
Mhm.
you. Your parents might have someone, you might know someone. So I just think it would be wise for you to at least explore that.
Mhm.
And then we get back and we powwow and figure out, that timeline, the game plan, whether
Mhm.
it's 1 month, 6 months, a year, whatever your situation is. And then you just execute on the plan, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
cool.
it sounds easy. I think
It's really, I genuinely
Mhm.
think, Justin, you're way closer than you think you are.
I'm sure I am.
And so, how awesome would it be for you to kind of be in a different
Mhm.
situation in, let's say, 6 months or less?
Yeah, it would be really
Um,
nice.
and probably maybe even spending the same amount-ish that
Mhm.
you are or less, and but getting the tax benefits that we didn't
Mhm.
even discuss that. I mean,
Mhm.
there's significant tax benefits, um, where you're able to write off the interest. And anyway, so that's something you can have a conversation with your CPA about as well. And if it is an investment property, like slash your primary, so if you did find something like that duplex
Mhm.
situation, I would highly recommend you talk to your tax person too, to just find out like what does that look like for you.
Mhm.
But I can tell you like it will be probably very beneficial for you
Yeah.
and your taxes.
Mhm. Excellent.
Okay. What a good talk. I'm
Yeah,
so happy that
me
we had
too.
this conversation, and I really genuinely think it's going to be useful for other people.
For sure. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I know I feel like I'm in a weird special situation, but I'm really not. I mean, I have a dozen friends that are, started a business in their mid-20s and they're still dealing with that. And, I think the only weird thing I have compared to most of my friends is a lot of my friends are married, which makes things usually a little bit easier, to be honest. Um, I mean, it's not a hurdle I can't get over, and I'm definitely not the only one.
Well, the benefit being a single lady, that you have as a single person is it's your decision. You don't
Mhm.
have to try and accommodate for anyone else. If
Yeah.
you like the house and it's big enough for you or it has all the things
Mhm.
you need, like, yeah, a lot of people don't want to live in a duplex
Mhm.
situation, right? Especially, the chica.
Mhm.
Um, so you're kind of at a great place,
Yeah.
honestly, to
Yeah.
be able to change the situation. Is probably going to benefit you financially and in the long term, because to your point, maybe later it's an investment property when you move on to your next thing. Um, so anyway, I just think it's something to think about, and I wouldn't be afraid of it. So it doesn't, you know, take anything to ask the questions and get the game plan,
Mhm.
and then we just execute.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a really great mortgage lender in my one of my networking groups that I want to sit down with, and I've already been thinking about in this conversation has definitely pushed me towards it more. And then you could send me a couple of your recommendations. I'd be happy to talk to more as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
Thank
Appreciate
you, Michelle. I
it.
appreciate it.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.